Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime as Liverpool are back in European Cup action this week after a long slog of what has been a few difficult fixtures in the Premier League. I think it's nice to get a bit of a respite now and to focus on a different tournament, and a tournament where Liverpool can, I think, let their hair down a little bit more. Of course, in the Premier League there are all the pressures of having to deliver on such a constant, relentless basis, and everything that comes with trying to secure the regular top four finish and challenge for titles and everything like that, whereas the European Cup almost feels like much more of a free hit, unless you're in the bracket of teams who are considered real, strong favourites for it, or you're a team like Manchester City who kind of look at this as the one trophy that they just can't get their hands on, and therefore every season has to be the season when it finally happens. For Liverpool, we've been there and done it now, and therefore the pressure's off a little bit, and like I said, it becomes much more about, I think, putting on a show, giving the fans something to enjoy, and also something for the players to enjoy as well. This is the reason that they join a team like Liverpool. This is the reason that they fight for those top four finishes, because they want to be playing on the highest stage possible, and that also means that you'd expect them to deliver their A game as well. It's not just about the lack of pressure of league fixtures and stuff like that. This is also a huge night for them, as it is for us, and therefore hopefully a chance for them to really put in a performance that allows us to forget about the last few games, forget about the last few results, and look ahead to the rest of the season. And it is good to see that there does seem to be a positive attitude around the club. Jurgen Klopp did his press conference today, which kind of put to bed any rumours about him being dissatisfied. If you missed out on all those rumours over the weekend, lucky you. Personally, I didn't believe any of them for a second, but I know some people were a little bit worried that maybe Klopp wasn't happy and wanted to take a break, and all these kind of ridiculous stories that were circulating, they've all now been put to bed. Jurgen Klopp kind of, rubbished all of those in his press conference basically, and emphasised that there is a good attitude around the club, because at the end of the day we are performing reasonably well. Obviously the Brighton game that we lost, you'd think that that was a poor performance from Liverpool, but after that, the Man City game, we did well, created chances, probably merited a draw outside of individual errors. The same thing against Leicester. The first 75 minutes we were well deserving of all 3 points in that game. It's just unfortunate and annoying that it all fell apart, and again individual errors proved very costly. But the fact that Liverpool are still playing reasonably well and playing in a threatening manner, still creating chances and looking like they are just this close to finally having it all click and the goals will start flooding in again, means that the attitude around the club is still a relatively positive one, and quite a bullish one as well going into this game. It was also nice to see Jordan Henderson do a press conference as well. Having both the manager and the captain speak before the game kind of allows you to feel like the ship is being steadied a little bit. It's very reassuring for us as fans to hear from those key figureheads around the club and get the reassurance that everything is going fine in training and everything like that. So like I said, it's good to see that the players aren't down, that they don't feel like the whole season's fallen apart. They feel like what they are doing will get them back on the right track, and it is just a matter of keeping on working hard and trying to commit to getting those results, and eventually the results will come as well. So team news going into the game as well. We got a little bit in the press conference today. It was good to see that quite a few players have returned to training after little knocks and injuries here and there, including Naby Keita, who is back in training with the team, which suggests that he is very, very close to a first team return now. He isn't going to travel with the squad to Hungary. Of course, I didn't mention it at the top of this video, but for those who don't know, this game is being played at a neutral venue because of all the travel restrictions in and around it. It's not being played at Leipzig in Germany. It's being played at the Puskás Arena in Budapest in Hungary, because both teams can travel there and back without too many restrictions. But Keita has not travelled with the squad there. He's remained behind at Kirby, which is probably the best thing. A lot has been said about how cautious and careful Liverpool are being with his recovery, and I think that's definitely the right thing to do, given Keita's injury history. So he's not going to travel with the squad. He will instead continue his rehabilitation, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that puts him in contention for the game against Everton. But personally, I wouldn't be surprised if we still don't see him for another week and a half or so, and you're looking to not this weekend, but the weekend afterwards, for when Keita finally makes his first team return. But that is still positive news to see him back on the training pitch with all his teammates. Origi and Ben Davies have also been spotted back in training after they were kept out of the squad from the last game or so from little knocks and injuries here and there. So that bolsters Liverpool's ranks a little bit as well. It's worth noting that this is a European Cup match, which means the 5 subs rule is back. It's still the same situation where you can only make them in 3 iterations, which is a little bit annoying. I know it's to stop the game from losing its flow in the second half or anything like that, but it does mean you have to be a little bit more tactical with how and when you make those substitutions, but it does mean that Liverpool can flex their squad depth a bit more, or at least what's left of it, and players like Divock Origi and maybe Ben Davies as well, who haven't had too many first team opportunities recently, Ben Davies in his case at all since he arrived, might be able to get on the pitch in some capacity during this game, which would be nice to see. So as for how I think Liverpool are actually going to line up for this game, while I did say that we have the opportunity to flex our squad depth muscles here, as I also pointed out, there isn't much squad depth at Liverpool at the moment, and therefore I don't think we see too many changes with the starting 11. You look back at Champions League group stage matches where Jurgen Klopp actually made wholesale changes to his starting 11. I believe there was the home game against Midtjylland where, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure we started Origi, Shaqiri and Minamino as the front three, partially to give them minutes, partially because of the speed at which the games were coming. There needed to be a little bit of rotation, and also because you can kind of bash the emergency button and bring on all three of the front three and have substitutions to spare if things go wrong. So Liverpool do have room to do that in this game, but of course, with it being a last 16 tie now, we have to go all out. And also, because Liverpool don't have the squad depth at the moment, it will probably be a relatively similar starting 11 to the one that we have seen over the last few games. So I think that does mean it will be Alisson Becker in goal. In front of him, I think we go with Henderson and Kabak once again. Hopefully, Kabak can show us more of what made him Liverpool buy him in the first place, because of course, he knows a bit more about how to play against RB Leipzig. Obviously, different systems. Schalke will have played a different way to us, but he knows a bit more about the individual players and how to stop them, and he might be able to help his fellow players do that. Jordan Henderson, he is the leader, and he is very vocal in terms of managing the rest of the team through the games, but at the end of the day, he is still a little bit of a novice at centre-half, and therefore he will probably benefit from Kabak giving him a little bit of guidance and a few instructions to help him adapt to the opposition that we are coming up against. Unfortunately, Fabinho's still nowhere to be seen in training, so it's highly unlikely he'll play in this game, so I think it will be the Kabak and Henderson partnership that we saw at the weekend once again. And then either side of them, I think we go with Andrew Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Another rumour that got rubbish, this time by John Henderson, was that Robertson and Alisson got into a fight after the Leicester game. Again, if you missed out on all those rumours at the weekend, lucky you missed a load of people going absolutely spare over whether or not that was true. Henderson said that he found the whole thing very funny, and that has, like the Jurgen Klopp quitting and walking away rumours, been totally rubbish. But back on topic, I do think it'll be Robertson at left back and Trent at right back. And then in front of them, again, there's not really much room for manoeuvre with the midfield selection, especially now that James Milner picked up that injury against Leicester. He wasn't seen in training today before the game, so it's unlikely he'll have any role to play, and therefore I think we kind of go with the most obvious midfield three under the circumstances, which is to continue with Gini van Aldum in the number 6, continue with Thiago further forward as a number 8. Obviously, he knows a bit about RB Leipzig as well, so we may see some very good things from him in this game, and then Curtis Jones completing the lineup. Oxlade-Chamberlain is still an option there, but it just looks like Jurgen Klopp doesn't really want him in the starting 11 at the moment for whatever reason that is. Whether you're annoyed by that or not, again, another thing to let me know about in the comments down below. Of course, now he is fit and available. It's curious as to why we haven't seen too much of him, especially with Liverpool struggling. You wonder whether the manager maybe wants to shake things up there. But as I said earlier on in the video, the performances are still good, and they've been good with players like Curtis Jones in the side, who has very much been a shining light in amongst all the gloom over the last few weeks. So I think Jones completes the midfield lineup with Gini and Thiago. And then rounding it off, I think it is going to be the usual suspect up top. That is Salah, Firmino and Mane. So taking a quick look at RB Leipzig then, we got a little bit of exposure to exactly how they play and what they're like on the European stage, both last season with the kind of interesting format that they adopted with the Champions League. RB Leipzig went deep in that. They got a good result against Atletico that put them through to the semi-final stage. They did, of course, then get battered by Paris Saint-Germain, but it kind of showed that they were being considered as a bit more of a serious force in the European Cup, having got to that latter stage, and then, of course, making it out of a very, very tricky group this autumn that did involve them dumping Man U out, which I'm sure we all revelled in. But they played two very interesting games with Manchester United. One where they dominated, they were very impressive, they won the match, and then one where Man United absolutely took them to the cleaners. So looking at what is the bad news from a Liverpool perspective, but the good news if you are a Leipzig fan for whatever reason, the way they took Manchester United apart was very impressive. And there are certain ways they did it, which I think mean Liverpool will have to adapt their approach ever so slightly. You know, they had fantastic wide threat players like Angelino at left wing back, just ran absolutely riot up against the Man United defence. For those who don't know too much about Leipzig, they tend to play a back three, and it is more of a back three than a back five, because you've then got a defensive midfielder in front of them, and the players that you might consider to be the wing backs are then more level with a midfield four. So instead of having wing backs that drop deep, they've actually got a midfielder that can also drop alongside the centre halves, and then the centre half lineup, the three of them, often comprises players who are a little bit more flexible and can play right back, can play centre back. So it becomes more of a back four as a midfielder drops in, and then in front of that midfield four, they've also got two strikers. But because of the width that is supplied by those fullbacks / left midfielders, whatever you want to call them, it can almost become a front four at times as they look to create overloads. And that was something that they did do very effectively against Man U. The addition of that wide threat from Angelino on the left hand side, and I can't quite remember the lad's name on the right, but he was a midfielder rather than a defender. Angelino, we know, is more of a left back from his Man City days, whereas on the right hand side it was a midfielder, so that kind of explains why they're pushing more forward. The fullbacks, they're not doing as much defensive work, but they're very good at overloading those spaces in a way that Man U simply couldn't cope with, and therefore I think we'll see an interesting approach from Liverpool. I think we'll see one that, if you're looking back on our recent history, maybe the 2017-18 European Cup run, where we absolutely blitzed teams on the counter-attack, but when you look at the style we played, it was much more of a conventional 4-3-3 than what we've seen from Liverpool more often over the last few years. The fullbacks were a lot more defensive. Salah and Mane pushed wide a bit more. You know, they were driving at opposition defences from those wide areas rather than trying to run through the middle, with Firmino dropping deep to facilitate that. And I think we will see more of that, simply because, you know, if Leipzig want to overload those wide areas and have wing backs bombing forward, then you can't afford to have, you know, Trent 60 yards up the pitch and Andrew Robertson doing likewise. It doesn't matter how organised the midfielders are and the centre halves are in compensating for that and dropping into the wide spaces to ensure that no gaps are left. If Leipzig have too many players forward, then we simply have to deal with it by having Robbo and Trent sit back. And I think that will help us as well, because when you look at Leipzig's weaknesses, and there were plenty of them exposed when Man U beat them 5-0 at Old Trafford, it does look like getting in behind them, taking advantage of what is sometimes a high line with their back three, is the absolute way to go. And that was something that worked so well also for Liverpool in the 17-18 season. You look at, I think the Roma game is the real blueprint for it, although you can consider the City home game as well. But when we scored 5 goals in like 35 minutes or something ridiculous against Roma, that was another situation where it wasn't because Robertson and Trent were flying forward. It all came through players like Salah and Mane driving from wide areas at a Roma back three, and then Firmino kind of actually playing a little bit further forward to intercept passes, to win the ball back in counter-pressing situations and stuff like that. And I think that is what Liverpool will really benefit from. So I don't think we see Salah the striker in this game. I don't think we see Mane cutting inside as much. I think we see them receiving the ball further out towards the touchline and then driving at the defence from there. I do think Leipzig may adapt their approach because of this. I think a back three, when it's a high line, is incredibly risky. If it's more of a back five and you've got wing backs who are very defensively minded in there, then it makes a little bit more sense, because you can kind of pack that line and therefore you can play an offside trap. And if a player does try and beat your line very well by only running at the last minute, normally there will be a centre half or a full back very close and compact to them that can go with them and close down that space. If it's just a three across that whole, you know, width of the pitch, then there is an issue that if a player finds a gap between two of those defenders and runs through it and manages to play the line and stay on side right until the crucial moment, then you are in an awful lot of trouble, especially if they catch out a defender that maybe hasn't got the pace that some of the others have. You know, Leipzig have got some very rapid centre halves. They have also got some defenders that maybe don't rely on their pace as much. So that's why I think Leipzig may adapt their approach slightly. They could look to have the wing backs be more defensive, maybe even have players that have, like Upamecano, who has played as a fullback and also as a centre half, actually playing the right back role or right wing back role rather than playing in the back three. Hungary. I think that's maybe something that they'll look to do in the second leg, certainly when Liverpool have the home advantage, although that is another game that looks like it could be moved to a neutral venue, so that could be completely nullified again. But in what is technically their home leg, I reckon they'll probably stick to their guns. You know, Nagelsmann is very much an optimistic manager. He strikes me a bit like Brendan Rodgers in some ways. You know, he's all about the project. He has a very well-defined tactical vision that he doesn't want to stray away from, and will sometimes adopt that vision over maybe switching to some tactics that are more of a horses for courses approach to nullify the opposition. So I think Leipzig will very much look to go toe-to-toe with Liverpool here. They did the same against Man United and PSG, and that worked very well in the group stage because it meant sometimes it went wrong and you dropped points, but other times you did brilliantly, you won games, and they got enough to get over the line. Whether that could be them shooting themselves in the foot, because of course at the knockout stage it's a little bit more, you know, it's a little bit more high stakes. You can play that tactic and go through, and it's brilliant. You can play that tactic, get absolutely pummeled, and there's no way to recover from it. But I think they will stick to their guns tactically, and it will make for a very entertaining game. Hopefully a game that Liverpool can exploit the dynamic of. As I said, I'm looking back to that Champions League run 3 years ago where we were so good against high lines, so good at counter-pressing, winning the ball back in dangerous areas and just flying forward. It's why I think players like Thiago could be key as well. You know, if he wins the ball back, picking out passes to Salah and Mane over the top that they can then run onto and drive towards the past the Leipzig defence and towards the goalkeeper could be very, very crucial to winning this game. But as I said, Leipzig are a great team as well, great wide threat. Those overloads can cause serious problems. So as a result, I think there will be goals at both ends. I think potentially it could be a draw. I think that's a good result for Liverpool, especially if it's a high scoring draw, a 2-2 or a 3-3. Taking that level score line and an away goals advantage into the second leg could be very, very good for Liverpool. And of course, with the patch of form we're on at the moment, you can't be too picky. You know, you can take a result like that and think that is a step in the right direction, and we can look to improve on that with the second leg. But as I said, if it's toe-to-toe and it plays out like I think it's going to play out, with a lot of attacking football on show, a lot of space in key areas for both teams, then I think it could be absolutely anyone's game. And listen, if Liverpool are on it, if Liverpool can take their good performances and, you know, find the end product and the discipline to make them really count, then we could come away with a very, very good result tomorrow night. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter. And I'll be back tomorrow evening after we've hopefully beaten Leipzig. Until then, bye for now.